New York State and then the Congress enacted the harsh mandatory sentencing laws we now live with, there were two reasons. Legislators thought judges were being soft on drug criminals, but they also wanted to give prosecutors a tool to catch drug kingpins. The only way to reduce a mandatory sentence is to turn in other drug criminals. So, the theory said, street dealers would turn in suppliers, suppliers would turn in wholesalers, all the way to the top. A few drug kingpins have been caught, but to a disturbing extent, mandatory sentencing has been working in reverse, filling our prisons with the lowest level, least dangerous people on the drug scene. Here's how. Perhaps you remember a remarkable tale of two crimes from NBC's Dateline 2 years ago. The first crime. Jeff Thompson, a small-time LSD dealer, and his 18-year-old girlfriend, Nicole Richardson, were caught by drug agents. Nicole herself hadn't sold drugs. The jury convicted her primarily of putting another drug dealer, who had become a government informant, in touch with Jeff over the telephone.
When can I get hold of Jeff?
Hold on. I'm looking for his phone number. Okay, it's 653-5172.
What the jurors didn't know was that conviction carried a congressionally mandated prison term.
10 years for a phone call, I just don't see it.
The second crime. This is Nicole with her mother, Angela. One night, while in jail, Nicole was on the phone with Angela. A drifter broke into the house, and as Nicole listened, attacked Angela.
He says, I'm going to rape you, and then I'm going to kill you.
Nicole's screams brought guards who sent the police. John Dwayne Yarbrough was caught in the act, convicted in state court of sodomy and attempted rape. He will be eligible for parole in 1997. Nicole Richardson, with no record of violence, no criminal record at all, will be here at this federal prison camp until the year 2000.
Nicole Richardson.
We met Nicole again in April as she was graduating with honors from a prison drug awareness program. She says her life here hasn't all been bad.
I think being in a place like this, it wakes you up and you see that the things that you didn't really appreciate on the outside are so important to you now. I want to be somebody and I want to feel good about myself.
All the other members of Jeff Thompson's LSD ring are back on the streets. They all informed on each other and received shortened sentences. Only Nicole, with no one to inform on, remains behind bars.
It still makes me angry. I accept what's happened to me as it happened for a reason, but I'm very bitter about that. Still.
Nicole saves the government a little money working as a clerk for the prison. By the time she leaves here, we will have spent more than $170,000 to keep her locked away. There are tens of thousands of Nicole Richardsons in our federal prisons, nonviolent drug criminals doing mandatory sentences of 10, 20, 30 years with no chance of parole.
I've been in a couple of years and I accept it more now than anything. My mom always talks about when she wants to bring her baby home, but I always tell her, well, in the year 2000 we'll talk about it. There's no sense in hoping. If it happens, I'll be really surprised, but if it doesn't, I'm going to be okay.
As you've seen, we can put dollars and cents price tags on the war on drugs. But is there another price, a cost to what we think of as the American way of life? A growing number of judges and civil liberties lawyers think there is.
It's probably the most destructive social experiment that this country's ever undertaken.
Stephen Duke is a professor of criminal law at Yale. His book, America's Longest War, is a major study of the war on drugs.
It's destroying the cities, it's creating crime, it's making public education in the cities impossible, it's filling our prisons, it is doing nobody any good.
You have said that the courts have set aside the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments to the Constitution. What do you mean by that?
Anything is reasonable if it's done to find drugs or to enforce the drug laws. The drug agents can stop virtually anybody on the street, stop their cars, search their cars. There are so many exceptions to the search warrant requirement, it's becoming a joke. Our rights of property have virtually vanished, where they can be linked in some way with drugs. If drugs are found in your house or your car, you can lose your car or your house, even if you had no knowledge of those drugs. You have to prove your innocence.
Well, how do we enforce the drug laws and not restrict our liberties in the examples you've given?
You can't treat drug use like rape or murder. That's crazy. It's just insane, and that's what we've been doing.
On this question of civil liberties, there are those who make the point that civil liberties should be equally available to all, and that those who peddle drugs are interfering severely with the civil rights of law-abiding citizens. A lot of people are comparing America's war on drugs to our disastrous experience in Vietnam. You may remember that a Vermont senator offered this solution to the Vietnam War: let's declare victory and go home. A similar solution is being offered for the war on drugs. What if we legalize them? Make them as freely available as alcohol or tobacco. Let anyone who wants to use drugs use them. Simply repeal America's war on drugs. This is a solution we can't show you because it doesn't exist. America has one historical guideline. In 1919, the Constitution was amended to prohibit any sale of intoxicating liquor. There are few good figures on what happened to alcohol use during and after Prohibition, but one authoritative study shows this pattern. At first, liquor consumption dropped off immediately and dramatically to just a third of what it had been. But over the next few years, it bounced back up to two-thirds the pre-Prohibition levels. The study indicates that alcohol use did not surge immediately after repeal, but gradually drifted back up to about where it was when Prohibition began. So about all we can offer about legalization of drugs is the history of Prohibition and some informed opinions. Robert Sweet is a senior federal judge in New York. He's watched with growing dismay the impact of the drug war on American society and on the kind of justice he must mete out. Judge Sweet would legalize the use of drugs.
It's the use of mind-altering drugs, mind-altering substances that ought to be controlled, that ought to be dealt with as a health problem. But to try to stop it by criminal law is, one, obviously unsuccessful, and two, is wrong in the sense that the government should not be in the business of telling people what they can put, what they can eat, what they can put in their bodies.
In a moment, some final thoughts and a proposal. Just about every American was shocked when Robert McNamara, one of the master architects of the Vietnam War, acknowledged that not only did he believe the war wrong, terribly wrong, but that he thought so at the very time he was helping to wage it. That's a mistake we must not make in this 10th year of America's all-out war on drugs. It's surely time for this nation to stop flying blind, stop accepting the assurances of politicians and other officials that if only we keep doing what we're doing, add a little more cash, break down a few more doors, lock up a few more Jan Warrens and Nicole Richardsons, then we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. Victory will be ours. Tonight we've seen a war that in its broad outline is not working, and we've seen some less warlike ideas that appear to hold promise. We've raised more questions than we've answered, because that's where the drug war stands today. We're a confused people desperately in need of answers and leadership. Legalization seems to many like too dangerous an experiment. To others, the war on drugs as is now conducted seems inhumane and too costly. Is there a middle ground? But it seems to this reporter that the time has come for President Clinton to do what President Hoover did when Prohibition was tearing the nation apart. Appoint a bipartisan commission of distinguished citizens, perhaps including some of the people we've heard tonight. A blue ribbon panel to reappraise our drug policy right down to its very core. A commission with full investigative authority and the prestige and power to override bureaucratic concerns and political considerations. Such a commission could help us focus our thinking, escape the cliches of the drug war in favor of scientific fact, more rationally analyze the real scope of the problem, answer the questions that bedevil us, and present a comprehensive drug policy for the future. We cannot go into tomorrow with the same formulas that are failing today. We must not blindly add to the body count and the terrible cost of the war on drugs, only to learn from another Robert McNamara 30 years from now that what we've been doing is wrong, terribly wrong.